and he shall snatch on the right hand, and be hungry, and he shall eat on the left hand. They shall not be satisfied, they shall eat every man the flesh of his own arm. Manasseh, Ephraim, and Ephraim, Manasseh, and they together shall be against Judah. For all this his anger is not turned away, but his hand is stretched out
Still. Hello, good morning. Welcome to Line by Line Bible Studies. Continuing today in Proverbs chapter 4. We're going to pick up at verse 24, but we're going to just start reading at verse 20 and go into the next chapter. Because we've read this chapter twice already. And I do suspect we will get... no, this is all one subject, so I don't think I'll spend the whole hour on verses 24 to the end of the chapter. So let's read chapter 6 and 7 from about 20. My son, keep thy father's commandment, and forsake not the law of thy mother. Bind them continually upon thine heart, and tie them about thy neck. When thou goest, it shall lead thee. When thou sleepest, it shall keep thee. And when thou awakest, it shall talk with thee. For the commandment is a lamp, and the law is light, and reproofs of instruction are the way of life, to keep thee from the evil woman, from the flattery of the tongue of a strange woman. Lust not after her beauty in thine heart, neither let her take thee with her eyelids. For by means of a whorish woman a man is brought to a piece of bread, and the adulteress will hunt for the precious life. Can a man take fire in his bosom, and his clothes not be burned? Can one go upon hot coals, and his feet not be burned? Well, if you move fast. I think that every time we go through that verse. I'm like, yeah, well, that's what it says. Can you? Yeah, well, you better not touch them for very long. Like, what's the point of that? Walking on hot coals. Obviously, the proverb writer hadn't seen that or something, right? Like, you step on something hot, you get a hot foot. Sorry, I'm interrupting. So he that goeth in to his neighbor's wife, whosoever toucheth her, shall not be innocent. So is he that goeth into his neighbor's wife. Okay, so he that goeth into his neighbor's wife, whosoever toucheth her, shall not be innocent. Men do not despise a thief, if he steal to satisfy his soul when he is hungry. But if he be found, he shall restore sevenfold. He shall give all the substance of his house. But whoso committeth adultery with a woman lacketh understanding. He that doeth it destroyeth his own soul. A wound and dishonor shall he get, and his reproach shall not be wiped away. For jealousy is the rage of a man. Therefore he will not spare in the day of vengeance. He will not regard any ransom, neither will he rest content, though thou givest many gifts. My son, keep my words, and lay up my commandments with thee. Keep my commandments and live, and my law as the apple of thine eye. Bind them upon thy fingers, write them upon the table of thine heart. Say unto wisdom, thou art my sister, and call understanding thy kinswoman, that they may keep thee from the strange woman, from the stranger which flattereth with her words. For at the window of my house I looked through my casement, and beheld among the simple ones, I discerned among the youths a young man, void of understanding, passing through the street near her corner, and he went the way to her house, in the twilight, in the evening, in the black and dark night. And behold, there met a woman with the attire of an harlot, and subtle of heart. She is loud and stubborn. Her feet abide not in her house. Now she is without, now in the streets, and lieth in wait at every corner. So she caught him, and kissed him, and with an impudent face said unto him, I have peace offerings with me. This day have I paid my vows. Therefore came I forth to meet thee, diligently to seek thy face, and I have found thee. I have decked my bed with coverings of tapestry, with carved works in fine linen of Egypt. I have perfumed my bed with myrrh, aloes, and cinnamon. Come, let us take our fill of love until the morning. Let us solace ourselves with loves, for the goodman is not at home. He is gone on a long journey. He hath taken a bag of money with him, and will come home at the day appointed. With her much fair speech she caused him to yield. With the flattering of her lips she forced him. He goeth after her straightway, as an ox goeth to the slaughter, or as a fool to the correction of the stocks. Till a dart strike through his liver, as a bird hasteth to the snare, and knoweth not that it is for his life. Hearken unto me now, therefore, O ye children, and attend to the words of my mouth. Let not thine heart decline to her ways. Go not astray in her paths, for she hath cast down many wounded. Yea, many strong men have been slain by her. Her house is the way to hell, going down to the chambers of death. Yeah. Pretty much right. And young men often have stupid fantasies. Just along these lines. I know as a young man, I entertained such stupid fantasies. It never happened. Good for me. The Lord always watched out. Funny thing is, actually, it did happen. But I discovered I had just I guess what you'd call a yellow streak about a mile long when it came to, what would you call it? Jumping on the horse and riding it, I guess. Yeah, I'm fine with horses. I'm using that as a metaphor for a slut approaching you. Okay. Never gone after one, even before I read this, even when I wanted it, because no honor to me for it. It's just because I was pretty much so picky. Because I had, I always was very a bit of a snob, to tell you the truth. Girls weren't attractive. I didn't look at them. I didn't care I was not interested. So some older girl who is a bit overweight and not very attractive approaches me in a sexual way. As a kid, as a teenager, even as lonely as I was and as much as I longed for female attention, not your female attention. Not that female attention. No, not for me. Whatever. It's just my parents were very attractive, and I always felt this sort of like imperative. I had to find a beautiful girl. Anything less, my sister was an actress. Everyone in my family, especially my immediate family, they're all very attractive people. And so I felt like this, if I ever came home with a girl that was less than stunning, I would be mortally embarrassed and like a humiliation to my family even. That's literally how I thought about it. I remember I told my brother, never date a fat girl. I literally said those things, Not that it's good to be overweight. I mean, you should, but there's a lot of reasons why people are overweight. Some people, it's a very tough struggle. And also I realized, I think it has a lot to do with the food you're eating in this day and age. Don't eat processed food if you're having weight issues. That'll be a good start right there. Eat natural things that God made. Make food that you can look at it and see it's something that God created. That's a good measure of time, right? If you can't see something that God made, then you're probably eating something that's not too good for you. And that goes for even the nice things. My wife and daughter make nice things out of flour and stuff, but in bread, Jesus blessed it, and I think that there's nothing wrong with it per se. But the things they were eating, the bread Jesus blessed was a bit different than what you're getting in the grocery store. Let me just say that. That's for sure. Okay. To keep thee from an evil woman, the flattery of the tongue of a strange woman. Like I said, I managed to flee from every situation where I was in that situation. I literally fled on a couple occasions. Wait here for me, and I left. I went away because I was really drunk and with some slut who was going to take me back to her place. And she wanted to go do something. She said, just wait here a minute. And instead I decided better, and I just left. Because something about taking the plunge. I don't know. I always just skedaddled, or that's pretty much the move. I'd think I have a new friend, but it was actually someone who was older who was trying to make on me. And so I have experience with this stuff. And, the thing is, I was all the while lusting. It's kind of a minor miracle, I consider it, that I didn't succumb to a lot of I think it's because, like I said, personality-wise, I'm kind of a dud with the ladies, I think. And, no, truly. And as far as when it comes to making romance, I don't have it. My wife would say otherwise, but she's different. And that's probably why, you know. But I found that the girls I was lusting after weren't for me. They weren't the ladies for me because of the things they value. And like I said, it's like when you want a woman that looks like a whore, you have a problem. You have a problem when you want your wife to look like a whore, you know? And in some degrees, some guys do want their wife to look like a very expensive prostitute at all times. And because, like men like their, I realize a lot of guys like their wives to wear makeup. I don't, because it gets smeared and stuff. If you kiss them, it gets all over the place. It's a mess. And I've seen her wear makeup and I like it. I do admit, I like when she puts on the eye makeup. I like the way it makes her eyes pop out. Sure. But the thing is, for everyday use, you got to understand, you're going around using sexual enhancements on yourself in public, young ladies, especially young ladies. Older women, you should know better. You should know better. And most older women I see do know better. I don't see a lot of slutty old women walking around. I do occasionally. You see ladies who are way too old, not for doing that. No one should be doing that, right? But they should know better by that age. By whatever, 30, 40, 50, 60, 70, 80. I've seen 80-year-old harlots who I mean, like, it's like the comedian, what's his name said, I realize that, just because a woman is dressed that way doesn't mean that she is a prostitute. But she's like, you got to understand, ladies, you're wearing a whore's uniform. When you're dressing up just like the whores do. And you say, well, the whores, the high-priced ones, the really expensive ones don't look like streetwalkers. They look like spokesmodels and things like that. And, and you think you look awful sharp. You do. But, And again, it's also the way the woman uses it, obviously. When a woman's actually using her beauty for seduction. But what I'm saying is, like, if you're not trying to seduce guys, what are you trying to do by wearing high heels and makeup in public? What are you trying to do? What are you trying to do? What exactly is it? You're not trying to inspire lust in the hearts of young men? No? No, because I always look at it as, I think women are dirty about this, that they go around trying to inspire lust in people and stuff like that, but they don't think about it. It's like if I was going around just taking swings, just swinging my arms around wildly as I walk around, just punching people in the face. I mean, not exactly the same, but it's similar. That's my power. That's her power. So, by means of the sexual attraction of a woman, let's just put it that way, the woman's sexual attractiveness, it can bring you poverty, guys. Because she's so beautiful, and you get so distracted by that, you don't realize what a piece of garbage she is, as far as human being, as far as, empathy, sympathy, love, suitability for a wife, a mother, a grandmother, all you're thinking about is the suitability for about, half hour of use, suitable for that. And it's the dumbest way on which you can assess a woman as a guy. It's the stupidest thing you could do is be fooled by her beauty. It's absolutely, girls aren't dumb girls don't think because, do girls like guys to have muscles? Oh, they do. Do they like guys to be strong? Oh yeah, of course they do. They find it attractive. They like you to have a manly frame and form for the most part. Normal girls. So yeah, work out, be fit. But the thing is, women, that's just being fit ain't enough for a girl. For most girls, they're gonna want to know what kind of guy you are. What do you do? What's your job? All that kind of stuff. What kind of money you make? Now, some woman who already has a husband, this is a real picture of evil. She's got a husband. Is the idea, and that comes in the next chapter, obviously. But so I should go through these verses, verse by verse, like the title says, right? I'm just riffing on the whole concept, but it's a pretty broad subject. And I also want to talk about it in terms of prophecy. Because it's, like I said, I don't want to go on an hour talking about women behaving whorishly. Most women don't, right? Most women don't, but some do. Surely some do. You know, I know because they've come on to me over the years. Whatever. Whatever. But the thing is, for most guys, it doesn't happen. But you got to guard in case it does. Because it is, as a Christian, like I said, it's your soul's kind of, this is not things we should engage in. Fornication, adultery. Come on. It always gets me when I see Christians engaging in adultery. Or, you know what I mean? I'm not even talking about like divorce and remarrying, that kind of adultery. I'm just talking about cheating on each other. But I do think it tends to be a nominal problem. I mean, because the women, like, I can't imagine women who study with me being like that, obviously. You're not going to be the type of person that listens to this sort of thing and then have that issue. But your husband might, or your boyfriend might. Don't have a boyfriend, have a fiance, all right? Your fiance. That's all I want to hear. I was telling, I haven't told my daughter this specifically. I'm not going to tell her. I'm like, if you ever bring someone and tell me they're special in any way, shape, or form, and if they go away, and then there will be no white wedding. I will presume that's, if someone has their arm around you, their hands on you in any way, shape, or form in a relationship, if that doesn't end up being, if that isn't like, you're engaged and now you're married, then no, there's no second boyfriend. Second boyfriend, that's how I feel about it. There is no dating. Not if you want me to give you away. You know what I mean? I get to say that. And that's why fathers, take up your power. Fathers don't use their power because they don't. They haven't invested enough in their kids to have any power. Because I all my kids I coached from 7 years old, right, in wrestling, which is pretty intimate kind of sport compared to other sports as far as with your coach. You form pretty, it means that you're for year after year. I remember I liked all my coaches in sports and the things they did for me. I remember, and I think, well, what if your dad was your coach in a very intense sport like that? And you build up what I call, like they talk about in politics, political capital, which means like they have a lot of goodwill, so they can try to do a lot of things, and the Congress is going to be pressured to just go along with it because, well, he's a new president, he's popular, he's got he's coming into office on a new election. They used to talk about that. They don't talk about it much anymore because there's no political capital because there's no goodwill left, unfortunately. But you can make it for yourself in your own home. You create a sort of political capital with your children by being part of their lives, by being involved with them. That's why I say, when you work 9 to 5 job and, 6 days a week away from home, your kids are at school all day, things like that. That's when things like you got to eat dinner together every single night and then play a different board game every night or something with your kids while they're little to forge some sort of relationship. Because without that, they won't care if you don't give them away. They won't care if you say no white wedding. They won't care because they won't like you. They won't want to please you. And if you don't build that up to where they're willing and even eager to please you as a parent, to do what pleases you, just like you would towards God, be eager to please Him, even if it's not always possible for you. It's a lot easier to please me than the Lord because I don't have as high standards actually, because I don't ask my children to be more godly than I was per se. I mean, I actually try to help them by put up better guardrails. I don't ask them to be more godly than me. I just tell them what they can and can't do instead of leaving them guideless. I mean, my parents gave me their guidance. When I was young, when I was like 5 or 6, they told me women are evil. Stay away from them. You should never date, never have anything to do with girls. Ha, 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 ha. And then when I was 15, my dad tried to talk to me about sex. And I was like, are you kidding? Now you're going to talk. I had this in school already. I was like, I don't want to talk about sex with you. That's why when I came back from college, he felt like he finally gained his son. Because we finally had something in common. I was very enthusiastic about the Lord. It's something that he had always been. But we had never really had that together. because I was, I was passionately but nominally Christian as a teenager, as a young man. I believed in it, and I was passionate. I'd argue for it. I was my team, man. But that's what it was. It was my team. So I didn't have any conversion. I didn't have any life experiences to drive me into the arms of Christ. But yeah, by the means of the wrong woman, a man is brought to peace. But now I want to talk about, the most, now, we've talked about that a bit. We're going to have to talk about it probably for another study or two. But I want to get into the spiritual aspect of this because it's really an important prophetic theme. Now, it's not being talked about here, but we can talk about it. Because, like the book of Revelation, the great whore. And I was thinking about it before the study, and I was saying to myself, I was like, boy, next time I really can't wait for someone to say, but the church isn't in the book of Revelation. I'm like, well, sure it is. Revelation 17 and 18. That's the dark truth that many Christians don't like to face or admit. That the presence of the church is very obvious in the book of Revelation. I call it the church, but it's the apostasy. Is the great whore. That's what happened. There's the saints, the church. The church is fine. The two candlesticks stand before God, and they give out the olive oil, and they preach before the world. The church does its job. The two candlesticks are the two churches that don't fall away. And the five that do, well, they're the whore. They wind up being a whore. Because they are those to whom Jesus says, I never knew you. That's why they didn't lose their salvation. We don't talk about losing salvation on this Bible study. That's nonsense. Because while your salvation, God saves you. The idea that you could somehow lose something that he's working on is actually absurd. It implies that you have something to do with saving yourself, which you don't. You don't. God saves us. He opens our hearts, he opens our eyes, and then we believe. That's a gift. Not of yourself. It is the gift of God. Faith itself is a gift. And there are people who are hanging on to the church, who are part of it, as far as in the earthly structure. They go to church, but they're not believers. No, they're like I was as a teenager. They're on it's their team, it's their neighborhood, it's their community. I remember being in part of churches and knowing as I'm in it and passionate, and the pastor's with me and he's trying to inspire passion, but for most people, it's just a social club. Most of the people, even at a passionate church, it's still just a social club. Like on a certain level. Because it's like, I don't know. People like to just have their beliefs, They don't like to live them. That's another thing. That's what makes a whore, because she's unfaithful. The unfaithfulness. We talk about the advice of the young man, but what about the young woman? How to not become a whore? How do you not become a whore? Well, first, don't put a whore's uniform on. Simple. That's a part of it. Because if you don't want to be seen as a whore, first step is don't look like one. That's pretty easy. But her faithlessness is the great whore. She sits a queen and is no widow and shall see no sorrow. Interestingly, though, she is not an adulteress. She's a fornicator. She's a harlot. Mother of harlots and abominations of Babylon the Great, the mother of harlots and abominations of the earth. And I saw the woman drunk with the blood of saints and the wine of her fornication. It's always fornication. It's not adultery. That's very specific, because the church is always portrayed as a bride. And when a bride goes and has sex with someone other than her betrothed, that's called fornication. And that was what Jesus said. One reason that he said that divorce was justified for the cause of fornication, because he is going to divorce himself from every so-called Christian. He's going to divorce you. Not divorce. He ain't going to marry you. There's no white wedding for you because you've been a whore. That's what's going to happen to them. They're going to go whoring after Antichrist. And I can see how easy that's gonna be, man. I watched it happen in the pandemic. People did things they didn't believe in. Wow. That blows my mind. That means you'll worship the devil you don't believe in to get along with society. People will. They will. They won't. They'll know it's the devil and they'll worship him. They'll do it knowing it because they're too much of a coward. Can a man take fire in his bosom and his clothes not be burned? Definitely not. Can a man go upon hot coals and his feet not be burned? Well, you have to move, right? You have to move. You have to get moving. And the truth is, right, you know that when they do that, they are almost not walking on the coals. I mean, as far as because, one, the speed and the temperature on the surface of the coal, it has to do with like all that kind of stuff. If you make the coals hot enough, you can't walk on them. Let me put it that way, okay? You can walk on hot coals, but there's a bit of a trick to it. Just like a bed of nails. I can make a bed of nails that you can't lay on. I mean, just space the nails out far enough, and pretty soon it becomes another kind of thing. It's not exactly a bed of nails so you could sleep on. It's more the one that you take a permanent nap on. Mm-hmm. It's more like an impalement. So, yeah. The idea is when you do these things, when you take risks like this, you're going to get burned. You're going to suffer the consequences. That's what that metaphor of burning is. You got burned. That means there were negative consequences waiting for you. And in this situation, it's like an inescapable thing. You say, well, wait a second, people get away with adultery. Again, like he said, it's like, you understand, it goes beyond that. It goes down to death and hell because God hates it. God hates it. He hates those things, a proud look, a lying tongue, hands that shed innocent blood, a heart that devises wicked imaginations. It doesn't mention adultery, but it's right. It's part. I mean, gosh, you use several of these things in adultery. Several of these things come up: the proud look, the lying tongue, devising wicked imaginations, feet being swift to run to mischief, false witnesses speaketh lies, of course. And so every single one of those, except for shedding innocent blood, comes into play with adultery. So he that goeth to his neighbor's wife, whoever toucheth her shall not be innocent. I mean, like it talks here basically, right? Hey, look at people don't we to this day we talk about this, right? People will say they don't even know they're mentioning the Bible because that's where they're getting it from, even though they don't know it's actually escaped the Bible and it's just loose in society. But it came from the Bible. The idea that if a guy steals to feed himself, well, that's different, sort of different. I mean, what they say, they don't despise the man. Nobody hates him for it. They understand. They may make him pay. If he be found, he's going to pay it back sevenfold. That was when you stole, you restored sevenfold. He should give all the substance of his house because you're not allowed to steal, even if you're hungry. You got to find some other way. Fast, maybe. Pray. I don't know. I've done fasting and I've gone hungry. So it's not like, oh, I got to eat every day. I mean, obviously some people deal with chronic hunger. And but you don't despise their thievery. You want them to take another way. You say, there's another way, friend. You don't have to do this. You don't have to steal for bread. There's so many, how many people wouldn't give a guy a job if they could, because he was stealing to eat? I mean, like here, give you a job, something. You're that desperate for no other purpose than to eat. But even so, to fill your belly, no, you don't corrupt yourself for that reason. But even so, we don't despise people like that. But when you commit adultery, everyone hates an adulterer. Everyone looks at you and they know you're untrustworthy in your most, the most sacred relationship that you could have. And the marriage relationship is the most sacred relationship because it's based on vows, not blood. Some people in my family have this like weird blood mentality. It's like, oh, blood's thicker than water. It's all about the blood. And it's like, and I'm like, but there's, but husbands and wives, well, we can toss those aside. But like but the blood of my children is mine and my wife's. Wife's, I mean. You don't plurify it to make it possessive, do you? No, my wife's. I thought it was like change the F to a V to make it like something else, whatever. It was a misspoke. I don't have many wives. I have just one. I've only ever had one. Only ever had one. One's enough. I don't mean to make it sound like that. One's wonderful. Really. No, I like being married. I always felt bad for friends who struggled to find somebody because I found somebody so quick when I started looking. I started looking when I was looking from the time I was a kid because I knew I wanted a woman. But that was the funny thing is I simultaneously had in my mind two fantasies of sort of like meeting a woman and who'd suddenly want to have sex with me. And then the contradictory of meeting a good woman who I could spend the rest of my life with. And you understand that those two women can't be the same woman. They can't possibly be the same woman. So you're really never looking for that girl. The girl that's going to sleep with you tonight, you don't want her. Ever. Whether she's married or not. Wound and dishonor shall you get. Nobody likes you, and also God himself is against you. And not only that, if you do get caught, jealousy is the rage of a man, and he will not spare in the day of vengeance. That's my, if I want to imagine myself, if I want to ask myself the question, Paul, are you capable of killing anybody? Are you capable of hurting people? Because you've never done it. I've never been I've hurt a couple of people, I guess, fist fight type stuff. But I mean, like, someone help, not someone who you're fighting against, like as a, peer to peer. That's the truth though. I never fought anyone that wasn't my age and my, general whatever. I never picked on it. I never been a person who punched down, as they say, right? I always sort of have to, but what I mean is they were in, like a friend who's also 12 who happens to be 20 pounds lighter than me, but still he stole my bike and hid it from me. So I'm going to punch him and beat him up till I get it back. That's what I did. And it wasn't, he said his back was all red and all that, but it wasn't like I broke his nose or I hit him in the face. I just beat him up. But anyways, could I kill somebody? Because I didn't want to hurt my friend. I was just angry at him. But could I kill somebody? Well, if somebody were to hurt my wife or rape her or something like that, yeah, I could stomp their skull in. That'd be pretty easy. I could just imagine that. I'm like, oh yeah, I'm capable. I'm fully capable. And that's the thing is that on some level, like if someone hurt my kids, I don't know that like some people, I would definitely be the type of person who would sneak around not waiting for justice and looking for my chance at revenge and take it and take the consequences. I don't care. You know what I mean? There's a certain, yes, I'm the type, I would not regard any ransom or rest content at any gift. You can't buy me off. You bought yourself a vendetta. That most likely. I just know that's how I am. I'm not saying I'm proud. I'm not saying it's right. I'm not saying anything. But that would be I want to find them. I want to find them and I want to hurt them. I want to skin them alive, Just like William Wallace did to his enemies. William Wallace? I don't know if that was what they call him. William? Whatever. George Wallace. No. Wallace. The Scotsman. Oh, my son, keep my words. Yeah, because now, very often people get away with adultery these days, because the law. Back then, without police, it would be much more likely, you commit adultery with somebody's wife and he kills you. That's considered suicide or something. Like that's almost the way it's portrayed here. Like, it's like you are sinning against your own, you are sinning against your own soul. Because the husband possibly will never forgive you, no matter what. I know I wouldn't. That'd be too tall an order for me. The Lord said he wouldn't tempt me beyond what I'm able to bear. Don't ask me to forgive that. I won't, not every sin is forgiven. There is a lake of fire into which idolaters, fornicators, liars, all the liars go in the lake of fire. Yeah, the reputation of someone who sleeps with other men's wives. Yeah, you will not be my friend. I'm not. I don't want someone like that around me. You know, I don't care what don't. I don't care why. Whatever the circumstances are. I don't care. Because if it was me, I'd kill you. That's how it would be. I don't know how else to. That's what I would do. It's just simple. But yeah, it's amazing to me that people do get away with it. But women commit adultery and then they throw their husbands out, and they get the house and the car. So you gotta be very careful who you marry. I wouldn't marry any girl except an extremely dedicated Christian. I wouldn't bother. Someone who took their oaths seriously. That's it. I think it's funny to me that I know people like ungodly relatives who would say things like for them, like they have to sleep with the guy because before they even date him, they have to sleep with him because they want to know if they're compatible or not sexually. I've had relatives tell me this. Sexual compatibility. I'm like, are you on crack or something? Compatibility. I mean, when I think compatibility, I think like, well, I mean, this is compatible with this. They're compatible. It works, As far as I know, most men and women are actually compatible. Believe it or not, they work. They somehow can work. Now, maybe not the day you first, that's people. Sex is always way too overwrought in our society. I think it's too much is made of it. Too much is it's built up, and we got too much of it on television compared to when I was a kid. I mean, it was pretty raunchy when I was young, but I didn't get it. I remember, I used to watch shows like Three's Company with my grandmother or my parents, and now if I were to turn it on, I'd be embarrassed to watch it with my kids because it's way too many innuendos that I do get. It's like in movies when innuendo, I'm like, thank God they don't understand this stupid joke, right? Way too much of it. Don't give your children a phone that is capable of displaying pictures. You have to be out of your mind to do so, or to give them access to a computer in their room in their privacy that has internet. I like the laptop our school provides the kids because it's like it doesn't allow a lot of things, whatever. Fine, but then my kids always use their computers. Well, you can see the room here. All the screens face the center of the room. Well, except the one behind me, but obviously that one's also sort of whatever. There's no exact. People aren't with their backs to the wall, and with their hidden screens, and all that. Even me, I'm positioned here, so I'm very visible because I wasn't always a good boy. And but there's so many temptations sexually. But in many ways, from what they say that people are having less sex, and that's bad, I guess. But I think it's probably, as far as young people, I think that's good. They shouldn't be all having sex. When you're young, you should find a mate. You should be searching for a mate, not searching for a sexual experience with a stranger. It's never, here's the thing. When you run that lottery, are we compatible? Guess what? Probably not in the way you're thinking. Does this person like what I want? Do they immediately understand what I need? Or what I think I need, or whatever, what I desire. The idea that you're going to meet a stranger who instinctively understands all your desires is stupid. And the idea that you think your spouse should automatically understand that right off the bat is also stupid. It takes time. But I can assure you, that the people who say, it gets boring when if you marry that's always people who are not married. They always say that BS. Like Bill Maher, I heard him say, I would think it gets boring, blah, blah, blah. You're boring. You're boring. That's the problem. You are boring. That's all I say. When kids say they're bored, it's because they're boring people. You're boring because you don't have any interests. You don't have any things you do with your time. And as far as lovemaking goes, that is this kind of thing that can, well, like I said, I can assure you, for me, if you have a close relationship, like a actual friendship with your spouse, and it's not just like some cold whatever, and then we just do this because we have to do our duty or whatever. Um, it took a while for me to fully open up, I think, and feel comfortable with telling anybody like what I would enjoy or whatever, or what I want to, whatever I want. What I'm saying is, and you see, I'm uncomfortable even talking about it, but over time, it's like I said, I think it's better than ever. It is better than ever. Lovemaking gets better the more you know someone. That's my assessment. The more you know someone, the better you are at making love to them. Nobody could make love to my wife the way I do. Why would she ever want someone else to? And that you should be at that stage. You've been married almost 30 years, and and your lovemaking is mediocre. What have you been doing for 30 years? You got to build things up. Obviously, it can go bad and sour and get boring if you're boring and you hate each other. That's a problem, But I don't think, to me, it's like when you make the best pasta sauce, you don't make an inferior sauce later on, and that you make the best all the time. When you have a good, I'm always of the opinion you do the best thing. And like I said, if there was some sort of competition or way to measure it, I'd be like, yeah, I think we got championship level here. And I'm just saying, that's my flex on married life. If it's going well, it just gets better and better on that front. And I can report that for sure. My marriage is always better. It's better than ever in every aspect of it because of time. Other aspects of my life, not so much. Things aren't always the best, but that is really good. And like I said, I attribute it to, I married the most enthusiastically Christian girl I could find. That's what I did. The most enthusiastically Christian girl I could find. And I did marry the first super enthusiastic Christian girl I met. That's basically, I married the first really, really enthusiastic girl that was enthusiastic. And she happened to be enthusiastic about my Bible studies. That's probably why. The right enthusiasm, Well, not my Bible. You know what it was? It was because of, she was just interested in the Bible and learning about it, as I was. And so we were both passionate about learning about the Bible. And that was really it. That was the key part. Because those other girls were Christian and they were enthusiastic, I guess. But not the way, they were enthusiastic about doing their little things. They do like bake sales to raise money for something and doing stuff, that kind of stuff. Like the social end of things. I didn't want a Martha. I needed a Mary. Mary and Martha. Mary chose the better, right? She sat at Jesus' feet and listened. I needed a woman like that who would forego those things in favor of that. Though my wife is very good on the domestic front, surely. So keep my commandments and live, and thy law is the apple of thine eye. That's used elsewhere where the Lord talks about Israel as the apple of his eye, or Jacob. But it is you want to guard your eyes. To keep it. Your eyes you protect. And you don't even it's so automatic sometimes you don't realize it. I've blinked as chunks of metal flew at my face, and or as a drop of gasoline splashes. I see it coming and close my eye. My eye always closes to protect itself. And also I'll put something, something in my hand will just come flying up almost autonomically when I detect that. Like it happens so fast I didn't think about it. I just react reflexively. And So your eye is something you really protect and guard. It is. And if you don't, you ask someone who's lost an eye whether or not they think, it's much like it's one of those things, right? And as the apple of your eye, it refers to the pupil. I mean, it's the center of the eye. It's the part where the light goes in, So it is very important. And he's saying, keep my commandments as you keep the apple of your eye. And doing this will help you live. Now, of course, through Christ, we live by Jesus. That's the commandment of God. What's interesting? I love that. Jesus said this thing that I always really love. I don't talk about it very much, but I love what he said. He said, the Father gave me a commandment, life everlasting. I love that. He gave me a commandment. Live forever. Live forever. That is the commandment. Live forever. That's really the positive. It's not thou shalt not kill. Thou shalt love the Lord thy God. Let's live forever. And all those things you will do. Because to live forever, you must do them all. But you can't do it. So the Lord Jesus laid his life down. So through faith in him and the cleansing power of his blood, we can do it all. He's done it. He did it. All the works are finished. Our sins are forgiven. And not only that, they're gone. And when we see him, we don't know exactly what we're going to be, but it says we're going to be like him. And the way in that context in 1 John, that's in the context of no sin, none at all. We don't commit sin. That's the ultimate, right? That's the ultimate through Christ because here you do believe after the resurrection there'll be no more sin, right? So we are eventually going to not sin anymore. Do not tell me I'm always going to sin. Do not say that. If that's what you say, you will end up in the lake of fire. Because what are you saying? Because that's not faith. The faith says that Jesus Christ's blood blots out sin. So I'm not going to have any sin. At some point, it's all gone, and there's nothing in the future either. That's what I look for. That's what I long after. Because I have to read over and over again in the Word all the ways in which I don't measure up, all the ways in which I'm unfit for God's kingdom, all the things I don't do, all the things I don't keep. Bind them upon thy fingers. That has to do with, he says, his what did it say? His steps speak. His fingers, what did it say of the evil man? It was back a couple chapters, wasn't it? It goes back. The way of the wicked, yes. I want to hear what it said about his fingers. It's early here. Was it back on the mother? Oh, I'm about to give it up. Oh, I could just look it up the other way. Shine more into the perfect day. The way of the wicked is darkness. No one will stumble. I think it's actually back in chapter 3. The chastening of the Lord. Direct your paths. I guess we could go back to the wicked. Oh, yeah. Whatever. I'm not going to look it up. You can't go that far and then not find it. I'm sorry. That's just unforgivable on my part. I'm going to look it up in Bible collection. Fingers. That shouldn't be such a hard word to look up. There's only 15 times in the whole Bible it's ever used. And it was actually in Proverbs. It was 6, 13. Oh, Paul, you're terrible. It was in chapter 6. It wasn't previous chapters. Wow. Boy, my memory. He winketh with his eyes. He speaketh with his feet. He teaches with his fingers. Your fingers say things. What your fingers doing? What are you doing? What are you teaching? Right? Same thing here. Bind it on your fingers so that they obey. That's the idea. You put the commandments on your fingers so that when your fingers go to do something, it's governed by that. Oh no, I can't do that. I can't put my fingers to that. Write it on your heart, the very seat of all your emotions. And those kind of thoughts, emotional thoughts, I guess. I'm not sure. Maybe sometime I need to sit down and really look at the idea of heart in the Bible. Because I've talked about, it talks about I try the reins, the kidneys and all these things. And of course they're not, it's not important that those things actually be functional as organs of thought. The thing is, what were they saying? What were they saying about that? Because that's how I look at it. It's not so much important. It's not important of whether or not one can actually walk on hot coals. That the literalness of that. See, that's another good point. If you take the Bible too literally, with that walking on fire, you'd have to deny that people could ever walk on fire, on coals. You'd have to say, well, that doesn't happen. And then people will do it, and you'll say, well, what? The Bible's must be absolutely literally true, right? And so it's literally true, and to the extent that it is actually impossible to walk on hot coals and not get burned. I don't find that this verse troubling, because it doesn't bother me that the writer of Proverbs may not have ever seen that. So what? So he didn't know. But if the coals are hot enough, you can't do it. It's a trick. But I could see people stumbling over that verse because it's like, oh wait, the Bible's wrong. You can walk on hot coals. You could look at it that way. It didn't ring true to me. Unless you say, well, you have to understand. Well, you have to broaden our mind and understand, okay, well, he wasn't thinking of that, obviously, when he says that. He thought if you just step on a hot coal, what happens? You get burnt. That's what happens when you step on hot coals. If you've ever stepped on hot coals accidentally, you know that. I remember that happened to one of my sons. I had a fire and it was out, a fire pit, and he was little and he jumped right into the fire pit. I didn't think he'd do that. Burned his feet up. Not terribly, but because he didn't stay long. Burned his poor little feet. All right. That they may keep thee from the strange woman. That's what keep the commandments of your father. Say to wisdom, you are my sister. In understanding, call her your... Why? What's the idea? Well, wisdom, these are the girls that are going to talk you out of going with the whore, right? Ideally. Nobody quite, nobody quite has animosity towards an inappropriate woman like your kinswoman does. Like your sister or your mother, or even a cousin, if they're close, right? If a girl is around that they think is not a good girl, that the hostility is palpable. I've never had that problem because, like I said, I don't. My kids, they keep my commandments and they bind them on their fingers, apparently, without being told to. They're sort of told to. Like I said, to me, as a father, when I listen to all this, to me, it's like I take this wisdom from it, but you have to voluntarily accept it like this, right? What I'm saying is, it's hard to just go to someone and say, do this, do that, do this, do that, do this, do that, do this, do that. And don't do that, don't do that, don't do that, don't do that. Do this and don't do that. Giving commandments in a way that it, like as a list, as a spelling it out like that. I think that can be a bit much on a kid as far as trying to lay an adult level of understanding of a lot of these things on them is way too much. And so, most of what I do to teach them, like I said, it involves one, two things. Because like I said, I always based my parenting on two basic goals as far as in my relationship with my kids. Is I want them to be terrified of me and also to adore me. Those two contradictory ideas at the same time. They're not entirely contradictory, right? It's not at all unthinkable that you might love someone and also be afraid of them. You know, so, you know what I mean? But I want them not afraid of me physically, like I'm some sort of unpredictable. And you know, like when I say that, people may think like, "Oh, what do you mean by that?" Not that I'm some sort of unpredictable wild man, though I may be. Because sometimes I am a bit unpredictable. It's because my problem is sometimes I hold in my anger and I don't say anything, and I wait. If I do that and it builds up too much, then sometimes I blow up, and it doesn't happen a lot, but it happens, you know. And so in that sense, yeah, I'm a bit volatile. I know that it's a flaw. And my kids know that too, you know, and so they're a little careful about it. It's not the best, you know, because that's not the kind of fear I want to inspire, like always volatile. The other kind I do think I have inspired, which is I want to please. I want them to want to please me. You know what I mean? Because if you overburden your kids in order to please yourself, to try to make them some little example of holiness that you never were, you know, if you lay that on them, you can give them all kinds of resentment, because their salvation is something between them and Christ ultimately, and their lives. I'm mostly concerned with just them not being criminal and also immoral. And in my way of doing that is it's just through, I guess, a gentle guy. I believe in a kind of a soft power, I guess, because I don't lay everything out, but we lay certain things out. Certainly expectations sexually are known. I that's one of the things I made a point of doing. You have to talk to your kids about sex. If they go to school, you have to talk to them about sex when they go to kindergarten, unfortunately. So that's why I don't advocate elementary school for children. It's a bad thing. It harms them, I think. I think it harms many children, actually. Every school shooter is probably nursed to that position through elementary school. And that's where the foundation is laid. And it does have anything to do with parents? Oh, yeah, it has to do with parents, too. It's not like people are always like, but they have perfectly normal parents. BS. That doesn't happen. Great parents do not make this bad seed thing. Now, well, there can be that. If you have a bad seed, it's mostly you. That's I don't know. I don't know. I mean, I don't mean kids that go astray, like prodigal. That's gonna happen, perhaps. None of my kids have gone prodigal, but it can happen. But the way I try to prevent that from happening is not being too tight on them. Not asking. Because I think one of the reasons is because I limited a lot of my commands to things that are important, like you hear in Proverbs. Like I said, I don't want them to be criminal. I don't want them to be immoral. I don't care if they jump on the furniture, as long as they do it. Well, I do kind of care, but I haven't cared. I don't care if they leave their clothes around. I do kind of care that they leave their clothes around. They don't always leave their clothes around, but sometimes they do. Look, there's something laying on the floor right there. I didn't put that there. I'll probably be the one to pick it up. And that's one of the things I do is I try to lead by example by just working hard and not complaining to them about their things. I'll tell my wife that there's a problem often, and she'll kind of relay it to them. Because that's another thing. It's like, because I often relay a lot of my commands through my wife, because so that coming secondhand, it actually is softened that way. To hear it directly from the authority, a rebuke sometimes is a bit harsh. I don't know. You got to use a lot of discretion, a lot of wisdom as a parent, because it's not just all one way. Just do this robotically. You have to be, as I said, in all things, I want to be a bit of a new wineskin. because I always have something to learn. Come on. I'm not an expert on everything yet. I know that. I'm not an expert on anything yet, as far as I'm concerned. The thing I'm most expert on, I consider myself a rank amateur. Because there's so much more to know. Okay, so I guess we'll talk about this youth thing. I guess we'll pick it up at verse 6. With it, well, like I said, I like the kinswoman idea. If you have a sister or sisters. No, I remember my sister, when I was looking for a bride, this was kind of known. I didn't say it like I'm looking for a bride, but she knew I was available, and she was gonna set me up on a date with some girls she worked with. But there was one girl that she was like, "Oh no, I don't think she's real pretty, but I don't want to set you up with her because she saw her being a slut a bit, just making out with some guy on a dance floor or something like that, And she wasn't a parent, she didn't have a boyfriend or something, just some guy, So she looks at, so then there was some other girl supposed to be nice. I never ended up going on any sort of date or even seeing a picture of her because I met my wife. That was the problem. Is like I think my sister looked more on the beauty, but more than just beauty, right? That's the point. Is that like she would look at a couple of pretty girls, but maybe the one that maybe was not quite as pretty but nicer, that's the one she recommends to her brother. Because that's what a sisters are usually like. They don't want to have a sister-in-law that's some slut, and they don't want to do that to their brother. Hook them up with some slut that's gonna be with other guys and stuff like that. Probably cheat on him and give him a miserable experience of a relationship. It wouldn't have mattered to me, honestly, because I would have. I was only considering dating people once and ruling them out. If she wasn't an enthusiastic Christian, I could have never even had. I could have ruled her out on the phone, which is what I probably would have ended up doing. Because I don't. That's all I was interested in. I needed a girl I could marry. And that's the thing. And the strange one, remember, is the apostate, really. At least it was contextualized like that, the woman who forgets God and becomes strange, like a foreign woman, meaning she has customs that are foreign to the customs which we have, which are the law of Moses. It's funny that Solomon was the child of he wasn't the child of adultery. Not exactly, right? That was his brother who died. But he was the next son. David did pay a high price for that, though. He did. Okay. What's funny? I learned that in the rabbinic tradition, they justified David. They say that wasn't adultery because of like a temporary divorce you could take while you're going soldiering. That's how corrupt the rabbis are, actually. I think all all that stuff they lay on top of the Tanakh, which is the Old Testament, everything they put on top of it is just corruption. Just like Jesus said about Korban. It's all just wicked. And that's why I think they think, like in the war they're conducting, I think they can do that. The violence they perpetrate can be more than equal, can vastly exceed which has been perpetrated on them, and they're guiltless. They do, and because they subscribe to many of them. There's an exceedingly racist ideology, and it has nothing to do with God or the Bible, or very little. When I read in the Old Testament law of how Israel was supposed to deal with strangers, of course they do claim to be the descendants of the Philistines, I guess, whatever, I don't know. That's an intractable situation, like I said. I think only thing that could save the situation is Jesus himself. Or maybe Antichrist, right? Antichrist can solve the Middle East crisis. That's what they've been saying for years, isn't it? That they believed that he would swoop in and save the day. Well, it's looking like there could be an opportunity like that. So we'll have to watch and see what happens, right? Because I don't know what's going to happen. I certainly don't like what's happening because, like I said, I think, I know to the end wars are determined. I hate war. It's absolutely terrible. You know, people are dying. People are right now trapped under rubble. You know, people that had nothing to do with that. People that were born in the past 10 years, you know, people that were born in the past 20 years. They really have nothing to do with what's going on. They're just there. You know. Anyways, remember the testimony of Jesus is the spirit of prophecy. And until next time, thanks for joining me.
And he shall snatch on the right hand and be hungry, and he shall eat on the left hand. They shall not be satisfied. They shall eat every man the flesh of his own arm. Manasseh, Ephraim, and Ephraim, Manasseh, and they together shall be against Judah. For all this his anger is not turned